Today we have two iconic bounty hunters to paint up. We've got IG88 and Boba Fett. These guys are just classic Star Wars. So without further ado, let's jump in. You can find these two miniatures in the We Don't Need Their Scum unit pack. I'm starting off by priming Boba Fett in my traditional style of a fully black undercoat. And then from roughly 45 degrees from above, I'm spraying him with white. This helps pull out all the details as well as give me kind of a roadmap of the highlights. And for IG88, we're going to do something a little different. I'm going to spray him first with black. And then for something a little different, I'm using Allclad's lacquer. So I've got an aqua gloss, which I'm running through the airbrush here. And this is kind of a gloss varnish that's meant for these lacquers. This will help give IG88 a kind of a glossy black undercoat. So that now I'm using the airframe aluminum, and this is going to react really nicely with that glossy undercoat and make it even more shiny. The overall effect will be kind of a chrome. And we're starting off with IG88 today, so I'm going to wash the whole miniature with MIG Productions Brown Wash. This is an enamel wash, so this is a really nice thick wash that will dry kind of chalky and matte. So it will take the shine off of this chrome just a little bit, but that's okay. And now I'm going in with the odorless mineral spirits and just pulling away those areas that I want that chrome to poke through. And this will take a long time to dry, so I left it overnight. And then I'm starting off with the details using a contrast paint. This is Black Templar. And so his bandolier is getting this. And I don't mind if the edges kind of poke through that contrast paint. It just adds to the highlights. And then I'm also using this for his guns as well. And then I'm prepping his eyes with a white. So I've watered this right the way down, and I'm just letting it drop into the sockets where those red eyes are going to glow. And I'm tidying it up with some of the contrast paint if it just overspilt a little bit. And then I'm using a fluorescent red, which should be even more red with that white undercoat underneath it. And then lastly, I'm using a speed metal, and I'm just giving a very light dry brush just to bring out some of those edges. I don't want to obscure the wash that I already have, because he does have kind of a grimy wash in Empire Strikes Back. I'm using the same speed metal to highlight some of the details on the bandolier. And then that contrast paint I'm just using for his joints. Then lastly, I'm using a Nuln oil, and I'm just adding a quick wash to the axe on his back. For the Shatterpoint Bases, I'm using a dark grey, and this is the same kind of recipe I use for all of my Shatterpoint Bases. I like them to all be on the same environment. And I use a Skrag brown for the areas of dirt. And then I dry brush a medium grey over the metallic sections, and then a pure white just for the edge highlights. And then for the dirt sections, I use Irocco, and I dry brush this over the top. And then lastly, I use a burnt rust pigment, and I apply this just a few dabs in any of the sections where the metal meets the dirt. And that's kind of my Shatterpoint recipe for all of my bases. So now we're moving on to Boba Fett. IG was really quick and easy. So for Boba Fett, I'm starting off with his jumpsuit and I'm using a bright neutral grey. I'm kind of working from the inside out, so I'm just doing any of these sections of the jumpsuit that's kind of obscured by the armor. And then for his armor sections, I'm using a gunship green. And I'm just taking my time, just base coating these areas. I want to make sure that there's a nice coverage and it's not too patchy, but luckily this paint has got a really nice pigment to it, so it just took one coat. I'm also doing this for his helmet as well. I am trying to avoid some of the other sections, but if it does overspill, that's fine. I'm using Averland Sunset, and this will be for any of the yellow sections of his armor. I'm also going for the Return of the Jedi look, which is slightly different color scheme to his Empire look. And then Mephiston Red for all of the red sections. I could have gone slightly darker on this red if I'm being totally screen accurate, but I wanted there to be some vibrancy. For his T-visor, I'm just very carefully using the contrast black and then tidying it up with that Mephiston Red if I make any mistakes. For his feet, I'm using a dark neutral grey that I used on the base for IG88. And a speed paint, this is dark wood, I'm using for the belt, just a single coat here. And also for the stock on his rifle. Now we're switching over to a Mojave White, and I'm using this for the pouches, which are just a slightly different color to his jumpsuit. And then that same contrast black for his rifle and pistol. Here I'm using Caledor Sky, and this is the main difference between the two costumes, is his jetpack color scheme. So I'm going for the much more vibrant look of Return of the Jedi. I'm just building in those colors with the existing colors on my palette because I'm going to give this a wash. For his cape, I'm using Greenskin. This is an old Army Painter paint and it's a little patchy, so I did 2 coats with this. I probably would have switched this out for maybe a contrast paint or a different type of green. And then while I'm at it, I'm just going to finish out the base, at least the base coats on the base. So this is that same dark grey and then the Skrag brown for the dirt section. For Boba Fett's Wookiee braids, I'm using Iroko as a base coat. And I'm just lightly covering these because the wash will help get into some of these recesses here. And for that, I'm using Agrax Earthshade. And I have thinned this down just a little bit because I don't want to completely change the color of the jumpsuit. I just want to give it some nice kind of sand and grit in some of the recesses. So I'm just doing an all-over wash over the armor, over the jumpsuit, and just letting it sit. If I need to pull it away, I'll use a damp brush. If I need to add more, I'll just add more wash. I'm also covering the cape at this point as well to help darken some of those shadows. And then for the jet flames, I'm using an undercoat of a white. I'm planning on using some fluorescent paints for this, and they work really well with a white undercoat. This is a fluorescent yellow. It came with my airbrush, but you can use any kind of fluorescent yellow. And I'm just applying this to the closest section to the jetpack. And then while that's still wet, I'm using a fluorescent red that I used for IG88 earlier. And I'm just letting these two colors kind of blend in the middle and make kind of an orange. And then focusing it more to the red towards the bottom. So I get this nice gradient between red, orange, and yellow. I'm adding more and more just to help that blend. And then I just let these two colors dry. Here I'm using a moon dust, which is just a step above, and applying this to the kind of the top quarter of the flames. And then a pure white, almost like a band around where the flames would be shooting out. And this just helps add some vibrancy to the model. And here I'm using that dark gray again. I've mixed in a little bit of Mephiston red, and I'm starting to block in some of the smoke where it would be kind of cooling away from the heat source. So here I'm just painting in some sections. Anything that's kind of raised is a gray shadow, whereas the recesses I'm still keeping to that vibrancy. It's a slow process and you can go back and forth, but I'm just slowly adding more and more of that gray. I'm mixing up to kind of a medium ash gray, and now I'm just adding this to the most raised sections of the smoke. This was kind of fun. This was like kind of a more artistic section of the miniature where you can just kind of add your own flair to it. I'm mixing in more and more white just to make this look more like smoke. And again, your mileage can change on this. You could in theory just dry brush over the top. You could leave it as flames. I just wanted to add just a little bit more attention than I usually do. Here I'm mixing in some Mojave white and just adding this to the lower section of the smoke. The idea is that as he gets further and further away, the smoke will then become more and more white. It does look a little cartoony, but that's okay because the style of Shatterpoint is very much a comic book style. And then if the transition between the dark grey and the medium grey is too much, I mixed a mid-tone here, and then I'm just going in and adding that a little bit more to some of the more harsher sections. This helps soften that gradient between the two colours. I'm adding a little bit of a highlight to the back of his legs. So this is some of that moon dust yellow mixed in with the jumpsuit grey that we used earlier. And I'm just adding in kind of almost a pseudo dry brush onto the back of his legs just to catch some of those wrinkles. And then going in with a pure white and just catching the edges. I've gone back to the jumpsuit and I've decided to add a few highlights to the front. So this is just that same bright neutral grey, and I'm just adding in a few key highlights here. I don't want to go much brighter than this because I don't want to pull focus away from the jets. For the armor, I'm mixing in a little bit of green sky into that original gunship green. And I'm using this as kind of an edge highlight for the chest armor. I don't want to go too overboard because I'm still going to add a lot of damage. But I just want to be able to distinguish the armor sections as a different material. This is just some Skrag brown on the belt. It adds a little bit more warmth to the leather. And then I'm using Caliban green. The back of his helmet actually has a different color, so I'm using this for the back of the helmet, and then also underneath his cheeks. That also has a different color. I'm going to do the markings next before I add the damage. So this is Skrag brown again, and I'm painting on kind of a bar across his helmet. I think this is a kill count, so this is just a strip of that, and then I've gone in with that original gunship green, and I'm just doing these quick tick marks. This is a navy blue, and he has kind of an insignia on his chest, and so this is a blue dot with a Mojave white dot in the middle. And then a very, very gentle line across both of those with that navy blue again. For his Mythosaur crest, I'm using a Mojave white square and then a Mephiston red, just a dash down the middle, and then 2 curly dashes on each side for the horns. And I'm just alluding to the idea of these at this scale. This is just the original Greenskin, and I've mixed in some of that green sky as a highlight. I wasn't overly happy with this, it was a little too harsh, so I ended up using another wash here. This is Beil-Tan green, and this will help get rid of some of that brown in the recesses and also blend the highlight and the shadow together a little bit more. And now for the fun stuff, the damage. I'm using speed metal. I did start by using a sponge, but it was just a little bit too imprecise. So I switched over to a brush, and I'm just chipping away, just finding little areas that I just wanted to add some damage to. Obviously you have to do the dent in his helmet, and the back of the helmet has a vent that is in kind of a metallic color. But I'm just having fun, just working my way around the model, just adding scratches and dings and dents. You don't want to go too overboard with the damage, so I'm just using the edge of my brush just to catch some of these harder edges. And then I'm also using this speed metal for the knee rockets and the items in his jumpsuit. I found that some of the damage on his shoulder and knee pads wasn't kind of showing up very well. So I'm reinforcing this with some of that dark grey again. And then adding some quick, fairly sketchy highlights to the rocket on the backpack. I'm adding another tone of grey to his boots because I believe that they are two-tone. And then finishing out the base with my dry brushes and a black rim. And here they are, 2 of the most feared bounty hunters in the Star Wars galaxy. I love this box, man. Like, you've got Bossk and Dengar. There will be a part 2. I have to paint Bossk and Dengar. Yeah, really cool. Just like an awesome, awesome addition to the game. We've had kind of a Shatterpoint explosion of releases recently. I've got 4 more expansions to paint. And also I picked up a bunch of Star Wars Legion on sale recently, so there might be a few more of those videos coming. I also got a Marvel Crisis Protocol couple kits as well to build. So be on the lookout for that. If you enjoyed this content and you enjoyed this tutorial, feel free to subscribe if you haven't already. Like the video, that really does help out the channel. And comment down below, have you picked up any of the new releases? There's like General Veers, there's some Mandalorians to paint, there's all kinds of stuff coming. But as always, thank you for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.